Welcome to the Bottled Up Podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Lou. And today we're talking about how you can cut down on your drinking.
When somebody's looking at their drinking, it's seldom the first thing they think of, I think I want to give it up altogether. I want to be abstinent. And you can understand that.
Yeah.
Again, they're probably getting something out of the drinking, and therefore to give it up altogether, big loss. So one of the ways that they start to look at, and a lot of agencies start to do this, they start to look at cutting down the drinking. There's big sort of fashion for harm reduction back in the sort of 80s, 90s. And a lot of the harm reduction was to do with drugs, but it kind of flowed over into alcohol quite neatly. So one of the ways of harm reduction is drink less. Now, very often cutting down drinking was something that was not just people who had high-end problems, but people who just drank a wee bit much. People who maybe drank a bit over the odds, and it can affect your lifestyle.
People are much more aware of this, I think, now.
I think so.
Most people know what you should or shouldn't drink, I think, roughly.
Yeah. They do sort of healthy drinking. The problem is it's rather confused. We used to talk about the safe guidelines, and we talked about healthy guidelines, and the problem is that there's no healthy guidelines for drinking. There's no healthy amounts, even though you get lots of literature saying, red wine. It's very contentious, that. And there are no actual safety guidelines, because there's no amount that is actually safe for everybody. You understand?
So, I'm surprised at that.
No.
So you base that on what?
Base it on research.
Okay.
Lots of research. Research from the World Health Organization, not me.
I certainly, I drink a little bit at weekends, but I feel that drinkers are being squeezed, and every time something comes out from the World Health Organization, you can drink less and less and less. But that's what they're beginning to think, isn't it?
Well, they've thought that for a long time, but you've got to remember there is an economic issue here as well. It brings in a lot of revenue. And for a while there, the government would actually use taxation as a health measure. But they used it in a cynical way as a health measure, because they would put up the tax on alcohol just a wee bit. Not enough to deter, but enough for people to grumble but still continue to buy and therefore fill the coffer. So it was quite cynical. But more recently, there's the issued sort of guidelines about how to reduce your drinking.
So for somebody who's really drinking too much, okay, how would you tell them? What are the steps you'd say about them cutting down drinking?
Okay,
do you work with people to cut down drinking?
Yes, if that's what they want to do. But again, a lot depends on people who don't come to me, who are just moderately severe drinker or moderately a sort of problem drinkers. They tend to be the kind of high end and more severe end, because people don't want to go and talk to somebody and say they've got an alcohol problem until they really have an alcohol problem. They almost have no excuse. They have no option but to talk about having an alcohol problem. It's not something that go, I must go and get my cholesterol checked. Or, my blood sugar's a wee bit high. Maybe I should go get. That doesn't happen with alcohol.
Do you think it should?
I think it would be good if it did, because alcohol's a huge killer. Even, and I'm not talking about just people who are alcoholics. It's a factor in diseases in almost every organ in the body. And you don't have to be drinking massive amounts for that to happen.
Which is surprising because, I mean, laymen like me just think liver. But it isn't just liver.
No, it's everything. Everything.
Okay, that's a bit sobering to use a drinking ban.
Yes, it is sobering. So it is actually quite important to give people sort of decent guidelines. So the first thing is the current guidelines from in the UK is 14 units a week. Now, that's not an awful lot. And it's 14 units a week over at least a minimum of 3 days.
Okay.
You know?
So what's a gin and tonic? How many units is that?
It depends where you get it.
Right. Okay.
You know, if you get it in your own house.
Yes.
So a gin and tonic, I mean, a short of whiskey is 1 unit.
Okay.
Or a short of spirits is 1 unit.
Okay.
But, but that's not an awful lot. It's not an awful lot of alcohol. Yeah.
What about wine?
Wine, depending on the size of the glass, obviously, it could be 1 unit up to about 5 units.
Okay.
A bottle of wine would be somewhere between 7 and 10 units.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they say really it's much worse if you drink all of the units at once. So this is why they're now saying, they didn't used to, now saying 3 days.
No, they didn't used to say it over, and people would save all of their units up and go and,
so they could get the hit that they were really after.
Yeah. And what's also happened now, which is interesting, is that it used to be very different limits for men and women. And now it's just the same, 14 across the board.
Right. What do you put that down to?
I think they put it down to the fact that men are dying more than women. So bring the units back. That's the hope. That's the hope, really.
Okay. So other things that you do to cut down?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is to cut down is how much you're actually drinking in the first place. If you don't know how much you're drinking in the first place, how do you know whether you've cut down or not?
Okay, so what do you do? A drink diary or something?
A drink diary can be a useful thing. Now, a lot of people are not going to keep a drink diary, but it is very useful if they do keep a drink diary. Let's say you went to Weight Watchers, and you go to Weight Watchers and you've got points and and calories, and you would keep a note of that.
Yeah.
If you could do the same thing with alcohol, then it gives you an idea of what you're drinking, what when you're drinking it, etc. Because people might drink more on a Friday, very often do. The weekend is usually the drinking is. But what time? There may be a football match on. Go to, etc. And there will be patterns of drinking, but it's getting to an idea of how much you actually do drink. Obviously, special occasions, then weddings and celebrations, then people tend to drink a lot more at that time. But
might be quite surprising too. People might surprise themselves if they're really honest. Take a diary of what's going on. Do you see that? I mean, is this podcast? I know it was for drinkers, but actually, we're all, if we take alcohol to some extent, drinkers, aren't we?
Yeah.
So what else would you say? So you need to find out what the units are.
Yeah.
Take a drink diary. I
mean, interestingly, most people think that everybody else drinks at least the same as them, probably more. There's a guy who came into our alcohol unit one time, and he was a really heavy drinker, and and we got him sober, and he was going to a wedding. It was a wedding, somebody very famous, and he was the nephew of the groom, so he was wanting to go to this wedding, but he was a bit anxious about going to this wedding because he didn't want to break his abstinence. So I sat for a while and I talked to him. We talked through some strategies that you could use, and off he went to the wedding. And so I saw him 2 days later, and I said, "How did you go?" And he goes, "Fantastic. I was sober the whole time." He says, "But do you know what was really interesting?" Because one of the things I told him, don't sit in the bar.
Yes. Yes.
If you sit in the bar, he says, "I sat out in the hall." He says, "There was all these people, nearly everybody was drinking soft drinks or hardly drinking anything."
Huh?
He says that I always thought everybody was drinking heavily, not like me. But he sat in the bar, and all the heavy drinkers were sitting in the bar.
Sitting in the bar, yeah.
Yeah. So he was blending into his surroundings by drinking out there. And he said it shocked him,
Oh,
you know.
that must have been very motivational in itself, I
It
suppose,
was
really.
motivational in itself. It was fascinating, and I hadn't really thought about it till he told me that, you know.
Mm.
But it's about context. If you're sitting among lots of heavy drinkers, then you're quite likely to drink more, you know, because there is a sort of social pressure, you know, which is another thing you shouldn't do is don't do rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do rounds.
No.
If you're trying to reduce your drinking, don't do rounds because you get caught into that culture.
Mm.
And if there's 5 people, everybody's got to buy a round, and you're only having 2 drinks, you know.
Mm.
So if you're a good Scotsman, you want to get your money's worth, you know.
Yes,
So
indeed, yeah.
you know, give me. I want my drink, and so that's a bad thing to do. And again, if you want to reduce your drinking, it's kind of stay away from some of the heavy drinkers.
Mm.
You know, the heavy drinking scene. Just like that wee man, if you stay away from them, then there isn't the same pressure to drink. There isn't the same pressure to drink at that speed. You know? But the other thing, you know, right at the beginning, you have to think to yourself, why do I want to stop? Why do I want to reduce drinking? Because motivation is everything.
Mm.
If there's not a reason to do it, why would you do it? You know. Now, it might be, who knows? It might be to lose weight. It might be because you're a wee bit concerned. You're not an alcoholic. You don't have a big problem, but you might feel, I'm drinking a bit much. It might be, you know, something occupational.
Mm.
You know, that they might have a really sensitive job or a really technical job, and to go in hungover might not be the best. And
Yeah.
and I've had 1 or 2 people in that situation who you could not call them an alcoholic, and you would, and under any circumstances, but it was just a wee bit too much for them.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So
the more important it is, the more important it is that you take stock, isn't it? Really.
yeah. As I say, it's all about why you want to do it.
Mm.
You might want to do it for medical reasons, as I said. You might want to do it for health reasons. You might want to do it for occupational reasons. You might want to do it because, well, religious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
Because we had people who have different religions who really shouldn't be drinking at all. For the, you know, so I'm looking at these things. So, but
Okay.
if why you want to reduce your drinking, then it helps. Because when you're tempted, you go, no, actually, I don't want to because,
It's the
you know,
motivation.
yes.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
motivation is very, very useful. That motivation for changing anything is very useful. You know,
Yeah.
in fact, I would say probably crucial.
Okay, so that's the why. Is there any more on the why before we go to the how?
Not really. As I say, just knowing why.
Mm.
But I mean, why can come in many guises,
Mm.
depending on the issues you have in your life. For some people, it really may be that their marriage is falling apart. It might be that their job is threatened. It might be. But what I was saying is that there is a whole range. It doesn't have to be that you know, you're going to end up dying if you don't stop. You know, it can be from there to, you
Yeah.
know, I'm spending too much time in the pub.
Mm.
You know, so it can be all of the above.
So how, practically then, what are the guidelines you give as to how to do it?
Okay, well, I mean, one of the guidelines is you sort of make rules about how much you drink and how often you drink.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you could say, well, okay, I'm going to have, you know, my 14 units, but I'm going to have so many on a Friday night, so many in a, you know, a Sunday night, and so many in a, you know, a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm going to do it. You know, I'm going to do that. I'm only going to drink when I've got food. I'm only going to drink when I'm in company. I'm only going to drink. So they're your rules,
Okay.
and you follow those rules. I won't have any more than 3 drinks at any given time. You know.
And do people, I suppose it's more powerful if you set them yourself to a certain extent, as long as you
Yeah.
are fairly strict with yourself at that point and you don't just keep saying, oh, it'll be
Yeah. I mean, well, I remember when I was drinking and new neighbour moved in next door, and we got together that night, had something to eat, and he said, "Let's go to the pub." I'm like, "Hello, I love you, thank you for moving in next door to me." And off we went to the pub, and we walked in, and I went, "Right, 2 pints." And then he said, "Right, my round. I'll have a half pint and a pint, And he finished the half pint. He said, "Right, we're going now."
Right.
What?
Oh.
We've just arrived.
Yes.
He says, "Oh no, I never drink more than a pint and a half because I'm an ambulance driver."
Oh.
And I thought, could you move next and somebody else and bring somebody else here?
Yeah.
So that was
Good for him.
Yeah, but that was his rules,
Yeah.
self-imposed.
Yeah.
I mean, he drank more at other times, but that was his rules for those particular nights when he was on call, or he was on duty during the weekend. So, people can set any rules that they want, but normally for good reason. They're not just arbitrary. Not just arbitrary. It's also about the way people drink. Sometimes they need to change their drinking if they're, in Scotland when I was growing up, people would be a half and a half pint. That's what they used to talk about, which was a whiskey, very often a double, and a half pint of lager, which was a chaser. Really, it was the whiskey that they were drinking. The beer sat there the whole night, and that was how men drank.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of the culture. And you went, right, fine. When we were drinking, then it was generally pints of beer, pints of lager. So
it's an awful lot of lager and beer to get drunk. What were you drinking then of a night?
Of a night,
Yeah.
the number of drinks.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I was dedicated to my I mean, you have to say, I had commitment.
It's not funny, really, but yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
So I was drinking. I was drinking a lot.
Yeah.
People just didn't want to drink with me because it just one after the other. So it was a lot. So you might want to change your drink. If you're drinking sort of shots, then make them into long drinks. Have mixers in them. Lots and lots of lemonade. If you're drinking beer, maybe have a shandy. Just anything that kind of dilutes the amount of alcohol, but still gives you the liquid. I remember when I was starting to get sober, and they were talking about how do you have a good time at parties when there's lots of booze around.
Yeah, this is a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the suggestions was drink a lot. Liquid. Not booze, liquid. Any kind of liquid, because it actually, two things. One, psychologically, it made you think you were drinking, and physically, it kind of filled up your stomach, so there wasn't an emptiness, and you didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
And it was actually it was a good strategy, because you've always got a drink in your hand. People don't give you drinks; they don't suggest you have a drink. But it also, as I say, it kind of filled you up and made you feel as if you were drinking. So drinking long drinks is helpful.
So are there any more kind of pointers just before we move on towards the end of this that are important?
Yeah, one drink is if you're drinking at home.
Okay.
Yes, particularly spirits. Drinking at home.
Would you say don't?
No, I would say get a measure. Because people tend to be very generous when they pour their drink at home. In fact, if it was a pub, it would go broke very quickly because they tend to pour rather large drinks, as I say, on the generous side. Because you look at it and you go, "Oh, there's not much in there." It's hardly wet,
Yeah.
So have a measure. Then what you're drinking. Okay, people might not. But remember, there was a fashion for having a bar. It was in the 90s, I think it was, and they would have optics and all that sort of thing. Okay, I mean, it was tatty, but never mind, But I was always jealous of it anyway. if you're, tell your friends that you're reducing, because what you don't want is them pressuring you all the time and try and get support. And if they're not supporting you, don't drink with them. Stay away from them, because it's not a great idea.
Question here. We're doing a series of podcasts, and we did one for families of drinkers. Now, say a family member has sent the drinker with a bit of a threat along to these podcasts, and they, quite understandably, for knowing what we know about being a drinker, have clicked on the cutting down on your drinking. That would be the one that they would go for?
It might well be. I mean, it depends what's in their mind at any given time. It might be this one, it might be controlled drinking, it might be some of the other ones,
So if they want to cut down on their drinking, really, I suppose you're saying, well, have a go at it, be realistic, and you may need to look at it in a little bit more kind of,
if somebody has a problem
sober
with
way.
drinking, I mean, I feel that this particular podcast is, the audience for this is kind of very wide.
Yes.
As somebody who, as I said, maybe just want to cut down because they're getting a bit overweight, or because they feel as if they're drinking too much, or the health, or whatever, up to people who are really heavy drinkers. If somebody has a problem, then this is generally the first thing that they try.
Yeah.
They don't go, I think I need an AA meeting. No, I'll cut down my drinking. And they may be very successful for a wee while.
Yeah.
But this would be the first thing.
And I can understand that. But it's a series of educations, isn't it? Really, if you're trying to cut down of what is possible and what isn't.
Well, it's a series of losses. If I cut down, then I've still got my alcohol, but not quite as much as I had before. If I do controlled drinking, then I've cut down a lot, but haven't got the same freedom to drink. Abstinence has gone altogether. So it's an incremental sort of approach to it.
Yeah. Okay, so anything more before we do the takeaways?
The one last thing I would say, and about friends, etc., and getting support, is if you're out in a situation where quite clearly you're going to have to end up breaking your rules, or and people are forcing things on you, walk away. It's a brave thing to do. Walk away. It's not the coward's approach. It's a brave thing to do. You say, no, this is what I'm trying to do, so I'll walk away. When I was working in the psychology department at Glasgow University, people used to decamp down the pub on a Friday night, and there we're talking about psychology and wise things at the beginning of the night, and slowly but surely it went from there to talking Klingon at one stage. And then somebody would turn around to me and say, cheer up, it might never happen. And I would go, it just has.
Yes.
Good night.
Time to go. Yes.
And I thought, no, this is it. This is
when you got sober.
I was sober at the time. This is my limit. I'm off. And I felt quite okay about that. I had no problems. And they missed me for all of 5 seconds, I think, because then they were back into the Klingon again.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, then takeaways.
Okay, taking away from this, I think if you're going to cut down your drinking, you need to know where you are to start with. You need to know your pattern. So a way to do that would be to keep a drink diary.
Yeah.
Now, people might not do that, but they at least keep a note.
Self-observe,
of how much they're drinking. Because, I mean, if you don't know how much you're drinking, if you've got...
You can't cut down a measure that you haven't measured. Yeah.
Which leads us on to setting a limit.
Yeah.
Again, you need to know what you were drinking before you can set the limit, and to know that it's actually lower. And change drinks. Go to soft drinks. Go to long drinks. If it's you're drinking beer, have a shandy. If you're drinking spirits, have long mixers, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All these will reduce the amount of alcohol that you take in. Yeah.
Good.
And improve your health.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's been really helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. And do listen to our other podcasts as well.